Hello everyone and welcome to a special interview edition of Sorta My Podcast, brought to you by the guys over at Tricon. Guys, Tricon is this great little convention out in Huntington, West Virginia. $10 at the door, kids under 10 get in free, lots of great media guests like my guest today, and a lot of great artists, vendors. Check them out. Also, below is all of our info, like our nerd news page on Facebook, Sorta My Comics, the Sorta My Podcast Instagram, and all of our various subject to change entertainment accounts and channels. But hey, you're checking this out somewhere. While here, why not like, comment, and share? Guys, Vincent Herman here, Vin The Human, joined today by comic book artist and web designer Todd Beistel. Todd, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's my pleasure for sure. Before we get into some of your current work and probably some of the more interesting stuff that's going on with you right now, I want to dig into some of your secret origins a bit. How did you first get into comic books, and what are some of the titles that you latched onto early on?
As a child, I grew up watching Super Friends and Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, so I always had the fascination with superheroes, but it was always in the animation. It wasn't until the Tim Burton '89 Batman movie came out, I got swept up in the Bat hype, and
like many of us.
I remember seeing a billboard and thinking to myself, I think I'm going to go get a comic book. And I went to the drugstore and I picked up a Detective Comics, and I still have that copy. It was a Norman bifocal issue with the Mud Pack, and from that point on, I was obsessed with comics.
Mud Pack is such a great beginner book too. That is such a great story.
Yes, it was, and I couldn't get enough. Eventually, I saw Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man, and then I knew I wanted to be an artist.
I was gonna ask, when did you decide you wanted to be an artist, and when did you notice you had that talent?
Well, I thought I had talent long before I did. I would just try to recreate these comics that I really liked, and I mean, I wasn't very good. I thought I was. I remember some friends and I, we actually tried making a comic book when I was in 9th grade, and it was horrible, but I had dreams. I thought, man, I could go get a job at Marvel with this. Couldn't. It was horrible. Eventually, in the 90s, when I was in high school, that was the birth of Image Comics, and we were all inspired by what the founders did. So we put together a comic and put it together at Kinko's. Middle of the night, we'd go to Kinko's and print these books up because all self-serve copies were half price, and they let us use the folding machine and the staple machine, and we put together 300 copies of our independent comic. Took them around to local conventions. There weren't many back then. They were all one-day shows. Took them to some of the local comic dealers, and they're still floating around. I still see one occasionally.
Wow. So it's got some. That obviously had some staying power then.
My story wasn't very good. my friends had some good work. I was still struggling. I was still trying to figure out what kind of artist I was. The artwork I produced at the time was heavily influenced by Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane and Frank Miller, and it took a while for me to find my voice. Eventually backed away from comics, went to art school and started pursuing different avenues. For a while I thought I would be a fine artist. I wanted to produce artwork for galleries. I wanted to do paintings. So I did that for a little bit, became a web designer because the illustration market was starting to dry up, and found myself getting back into comics. And I've been doing comics ever since.
Okay, great. So you've got the comics, they've come into play, you started drawing. How did those two things come together to get you into the industry with Broken Icon? I
didn't really have a whole lot of dreams of doing comics at that point because I had a full-time job with health insurance, which is a nice thing to have, and it's tough in the comic book industry. I also had a family. I was married, had a couple of kids. I was living the life of an adult. And I thought, breaking into comics, that's a young man's game. That's something that I've missed my prime. I was in my 30s at this point, and a lot of the up and coming artists, they're young, they're in their 20s. So I figured my time has passed, but I would take these walks around the work parking lot with my coworker, and we talk comics all the time. And we kind of came up with a concept for a character, and thought this would be really cool. It'd be fun if somebody would create this book, but we really didn't want to do it. And it's kind of put it on the back burner. We didn't really worry about it. And I remember we went to Mid-Ohio Con, which is, I live in Columbus, Ohio, and there was a big convention here in Columbus. Now it's owned by Wizard World, and it's gotten a lot larger. But we went one year, and Steve Scott was there. And I started talking to Steve Scott, who had worked on X-Men Forever, and he worked on Batman right before the New 52. I showed him some of my work. I told him, I don't want to be a penciler. If I was to get a job in comics, I think I'd want to be an inker, because I enjoy doing a lot of inking. And he was encouraging while discouraging me from thinking of inking. He was telling me inking is it's going away. It's people pencil now, and they adjust the levels in Photoshop. So a lot of books are moving away from inking. That was back then.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, I mean, it never happened. I mean, I remember like Rob Liefeld was doing some really tight pencils, and that's what was produced. They didn't ink those. It seems like they've gone back to hiring inkers, but he told me, no, if you want comics, if you want to work in comics, you have to be a penciler. And it still scared the crap out of me, because that's a lot of work, penciling a comic. He's an encouraging guy. He motivates. And I remember walking away from his table thinking, hey, this comic that we came up with, maybe we can make this. We don't have any money, so maybe we'll make it as a webcomic. And then we can put it out there and get an idea of what people think. So we produced it as a webcomic and started setting up at our first shows. And the first show that we set up at was a small press show here in Columbus. At that show, we met two gentlemen, one by the name of Eric Watkins and the other one, James Maddox, who have Broken Icon Comics.
Yeah.
And they were still fairly new at the time. And I started talking with them just as friends. And we became pretty good close friends for a few years while I was working on the webcomic, and we were putting it in book form. And that book was called Yuri Gypsy Hunter. So we had a pretty good friendship at that point, and we decided to put Yuri on hold. James and Eric found out, and James pitched Horror Show to me. And from that point on, I've been working with Broken Icon. It's been a really great relationship. They're great guys to work with.
Yeah, and that's a pretty great story. It's one of those it's never too late kind of situations. Yeah,
I mean, I don't see myself ever being the superstar artist that I imagined in the 90s. But, I've got people that buy my books. Yeah. I'm telling stories. That's really all that matters to me, is that I can tell stories and people react positively to my work. Yeah, I'm happy doing what I do. And I said I have a couple of kids. I have two sons, 10 and 7, and they've started joining me at comic book conventions. And they want to be comic for it. It is. They set up at the table next to me, and they sell their commissions. We were at Free Comic Book Day last weekend, and they had their own table, and they debuted their own comics at that show. So it's pretty awesome. I mean, I'm inspiring them. So
yeah, and that's really cool for them. I have two sons myself. One is 11 and one is 4. So one of them at least still has some time to get a grasp of it. But the 12-year-old, yeah, he's been reading the comics a few years now. He started drawing.
You never know where they'll end up. I mean, that could be the next superstar. Could be the next Alex Ross.
Right. Well, I thought I was going to be a professional wrestler, so You also do a lot of commissions, and I wanted to ask you, what are some of the weirdest out there requests you've ever received?
I've had some weird requests. The two that stand out the most to me, one was at Tricon. We had a book, a sketch cover that Eric and James through Broken Icon produced, and it was called Night of the Living Tricon. And they would have the Broken Icon artists do sketches. And I had somebody requested that I draw the facility after a zombie apocalypse. So I had to go outside, take a picture of the arena, and then draw the architecture as it's been destroyed by zombies. So that was a weird one. And I had another one that was at Gem City Comic-Con in Dayton, Ohio. I'd say probably maybe 5 or 6 years ago. There was a guy came up to me, asked me to draw a giant Venus flytrap with a box of Ajax next to the pot. And then he wanted to have a castle in the background in the distance.
Is that a reference to something?
I don't know. And inside the mouth of the Venus flytrap, he wanted it holding a sword.
Wow.
So that was one of the more elaborate requests I've had. Normally they'll just say, "Hey, can you draw a Green Lantern?" It's not too often that somebody is that specific about every detail. It was fun.
Yeah, I would say
it was weird but fun.
Yeah. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and take a little break here. We did a little ad of our own for Tricon, a fun little time travel bit that we came up with, and we're going to cue that right now. We'll get back to the interview right after.
Where is Odle at, man?
I don't know, man. He's always talking about how he needs to be out of here by a certain time. We make accommodations.
It's already 7:30.
I know.
Whoa! Guys, we had such a blast. What are you talking about?
Did you just come out of the portal?
Yeah, I think we're skipping over that fact.
Oh, there's no time for that right now.
That was uncalled for.
Guys, Tricon.
Oh, okay. What is that?
Is that a Comic-Con?
It is the Tri-State Comic Book Convention, June 2nd, Huntington, West Virginia, Big Sandy Superstore Arena.
Okay, well, these comic book conventions are always money pits, man. Can we really afford that?
No. This one is only $10 for admission. Kids under 10, get in free.
Wow.
Yeah.
But is it, okay, that cheap? It's got to be just like boxes of comics as far as the eye can see. Nothing really worth seeing.
No. We've got vendors, we've got artists, we've got some pretty stellar media guests.
Whoa.
There's going to be a cosplay contest. The winner just...
Who was it?
You got to be there to find out.
Well, let's get our tickets right now, then.
Come on, guys.
Let's jump in the time warp.
Okay, and we're back. How'd you dig the ad there, Todd?
That was great. I liked it.
Yeah, a lot of twists and turns, little drama there in the middle. Speaking of drama, I want to get a little personal with you now. You once stated in a questionnaire with Broken Icon Comics that Catwoman was the worst comic book movie ever, even though many would say that title belongs to Fan Forstick. So my question for you is, what'd you think of Infinity War?
Infinity War was incredible.
Right.
I just saw that last Friday. I was holding out. It was hard not to get the spoilers because everybody was spoiling it.
Oh yeah.
But I promised my sons that I'd wait until I could take them. So I had to wait a week. It was a long, excruciatingly long week. And we went to a 7:45 showing the night before Free Comic Book Day. And we just had a killer time. It was awesome. We loved that movie.
Were you in a packed theater?
It was. We were towards the front.
Nice.
And my 43-year-old eyes don't like the front row. So I have to go see it again because I know I missed stuff.
Right.
But
you can't help but love that packed theater experience because it's really a communal event at that point. It's not just, we popped in to catch a flick. It's an experience.
It is, and that's why it's so important to see these movies right when they come out. Not only so you're not spoiled by everybody with a mouth and a social account, but you've got to have that experience. Going to see a Star Wars movie opening day where people cheer and they're cosplayers and there's lightsabers. You don't get that experience 3 months after it's been out.
The perfect, I think the most perfect example of that I've ever experienced, and I've been in quite a few of these like first day packed theater situations, but without spoiling it, The Last Jedi, even though, it's been out, and if it was very important for people to see, they would have seen it by now, but without spoiling it, there is a very quiet moment in that film involving Admiral Holdo. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, well, as that's going down, the theater's already quiet. We're all enveloped in the action and stuff. But then the scene goes dead quiet. No music, no sound effects, nothing. It's just dead quiet. The whole theater is quiet. You're not hearing popcorn. You're not hearing a sip of a soda. It's just blank. And it seems to go on forever until one guy in the back goes, "Whoa." And the entire theater just started laughing because of that one guy. Yeah, so you don't get that, watching the Blu-ray at home. And don't get me wrong, I love rewatching all of this stuff, but you just don't get that.
Well, those are the memories that really stick with you too. I mean, even more so than the movie sometimes. I mentioned the '89 Batman movie that came out. I wasn't even old enough to drive. My older sister took me to that movie, and we went to very few movies. We bonded. Occasionally we would go to a movie, and we went to see that. And I remember at a really quiet moment, my sister dropped a box of lemon heads from the back of the theater, and they bounced from the back row to the front row, and it just seemed to go on forever. And that memory sticks to me more than actually seeing the movie.
Yeah.
It's
that's saying
that memory.
Something, because nobody had seen anything like that at that time either. So
No, but I've seen that movie so many other times that I've flooded my brain with other memories associated with that movie. But that theater experience, it's the Lemonheads.
So moving along, you're currently working on 2 titles right now. You mentioned Horror Show earlier, and you're also working on Frank, which I believe just recently came out. Tell us a little about those books.
Well, Horror Show, that was a 3-issue series that we worked on. James and I had worked on.
Okay.
He pitched it to me. I didn't realize he was even pitching it to me. We were at a restaurant after a show, and he told me the story, and it sounded awesome. It had a Tales from the Crypt type of vibe. It had monsters, and I love that type of stuff. Yeah. And the first issue had zombies. I told him, yeah, that's a great story. I can't wait to read it. And we left the restaurant, and he asked, so what do you think? Are you going to do it? Like, what do you mean? Are you going to work on the book? Like, you want me to draw it? Yeah, draw it. All right, sure, I'll do it. The Horror Show was a blast to work on. It's been in trade form for a while. Popularity just seems to keep on going. It does not let up. We take these books to the shows, and Horror Show is always selling. People are always asking for it. We've had people that have bought multiple copies because they would loan theirs out and they wouldn't get it back. So they would buy another copy, and then they would loan that out and wouldn't get it back. So they'd come back and buy a third copy. So it's one of those books, and the concept of it starts with 2 guys just hanging out in a log cabin, and one doesn't realize his buddy set him up on a scare tactics style prank show. So a swarm of actors posing as zombies invade the cabin to scare the crap out of this guy. And what they don't realize is he's got this dark secret, this family secret that nobody knows. He's been able to control it. Not this night. He can't control it anymore, and just wreaks havoc on everybody. And from that point on, it's got a bounty hunter, and and monsters, and there's people getting sliced up. It's a lot of fun.
Sounds pretty interesting.
We've got action figures of the monster that's on the cover that's going to be coming out pretty soon.
No way. You guys are actually producing toys for this thing too, huh?
Yeah, they look really, really cool.
Oh,
I
that's
can't wait
great.
to see them. I think we're going to try and have them at Tricon.
Awesome. Well, hey, Sorta Mites, if you want to pick up the book and the character, it's one place to go.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. I really like that book. And then Frank, issue 2 just came out. I'm working on 3 now. It's a 4-issue series. And Frank is kind of an interesting story that I got involved with also because, we wrapped up Horror Show and I was looking for another project to work on. And we were sitting at a table at a convention, and Eric starts giving me these story ideas that he has that he wants to develop. I told him I'll work on one, but I don't want to do zombies. I've kind of did my thing with zombies on Horror Show, and anytime people would buy a copy of the book, the floppy, I would always draw a zombie head. So I drew a lot of zombies.
Right.
And I told him, I'm not sure if I want to do any more zombies. So he says, okay, well, hear me out. He said, this book, it's about a zombie and his ghost. I told you I don't want to do a zombie book. I'm tired of zombies. It's like, no, let me explain it. He proceeded to act out the first issue. There's nothing subtle about Eric. He's telling me the story, and he's really, really acting out the dialogue, and he's making the facial expressions, and his arms are moving because he's a very animated person. And I was on the floor laughing. It was hysterical. And while I was tired of drawing zombies, I wanted to draw something lighter. I didn't want to do a straight horror book anymore.
Right.
And what he was pitching to me was a comedy. Like I said, it's about a zombie and his ghost. It's like The Odd Couple. That really attracted me to it. So, I mean, the story of Frank, it's this guy dies in the zombie apocalypse, and he's stuck here. His ghost is stuck here, and he discovers his body as a zombie. Well, he starts trying to interact with the zombie, and he realizes he can control the zombie by snapping his fingers. He can have some kind of control over him. So he takes him around and has him do things that he wants him to do. It's funny. The second issue, he teaches Zombie Frank how to do the Michael Jackson Thriller dance. So on the cover, I've got a drawing of him with a bunch of dancers, including Michael Jackson.
That's awesome.
So while I don't want to draw zombies anymore, these are fun zombies. It's a lot of fun to work on. I kind of modeled the character of Frank. He's evolved over the 2 issues. He's really become Will Ferrell. He's become a more bloated Will Ferrell. So he's become a far more of a caricature than he was in the first issue, and far more of a caricature than any other books I've drawn.
Yeah, I was going to say, this sounds very unique. I can't say that I've ever heard of a ghost zombie team-up situation before. So, yeah, I mean, just from the ground floor, you guys are working with something special and different there. So, and it just sounds funny.
It's great. If I could get Eric, if I could talk him into pitching it to customers like he pitches it to me, we wouldn't be able to keep any of them in stock.
Right. You need to do a commercial. Like a full-on commercial. You never actually show the book. It's just him acting it out. There you go. You guys can have that one. Okay, I do have one final question for you, and it's more of a what-if kind of question. Let's say Marvel and DC come calling. They want you, and you're going to get your pick of the litter, but you can only pick one book from one company. Where do you go? What book do you choose? And who do you want to work on it with?
Well, the book that got me into comics as an artist was Spider-Man, but I wouldn't want to work on that because that's not who I am anymore. I think the character that I would probably want to draw, and I know it's a cliche, but it's Batman. And I think the reason it's Batman is there's so much to work with, but then there's also so much flexibility because there have been so many different artists with different approaches that I think that is one of the characters. There are no limits with how you can interpret him.
Yeah.
It's really wide open.
Yeah, I mean,
you don't have that flexibility with any other books or any other characters that I can think of.
Speaking more to that point, have you read any of the newer All-Star Batman books?
I have not.
It's there are certain arcs, and they all carry from beginning to end one story, but it's kind of an annual in a way because the art is usually changing book to book. I think the first 3 or 4 are the same artist, but and then they switched it out consistently, and they've been doing that with the annuals lately. I would say you're onto something there. That is a manipulatable character with a rich history and yet more to tell. Are you following any of the current books?
Not too much. I kind of got away from it because I've got the day job and I've got kids and I'm trying to produce my own comics. So something's got to give.
You're preaching to the choir here. I've got books stacked up behind me from weeks.
I'm trying to get back into it. My favorite character has always been Daredevil.
Oh, yeah.
Daredevil is a book that I've been buying since I think 276, and I just picked up 600 when it came out.
Yeah, the milestone issue just recently came out.
It hit the milestone issue. I picked up the issues before that so I could get caught up on it, and I really like the direction that they're going with that. And I picked up Action 1000 because,
of course,
because you have to, and that book made me cry. Man, Tom King's story just one got me.
We have a comic book segment on our normal Sorta My Podcast, and usually we'll give like a quick synopsis of the book, and then we'll openly discuss it. Usually it doesn't take more than like 15-20 minutes. We went an hour on that book. Yeah,
there's so much in that book. It was a great book.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get back into it, but it's really challenging.
If I could suggest one thing, and I brought up Batman because I was going to talk to you a little bit about that. Basically, what I was going to say was they've actually been focusing a little more on the characters in his life than him. There are still arcs that go on and they're Batman-centric, but like the wedding is coming up, Batman, Catwoman. Detective has been focusing more on will Tim Drake turn into this evil alternate version of himself who's Batman from the future, or will he turn everything around? But the one book from these recent DC runs that I would suggest to you is Superman. Peter J. Tomasi, his run on that book has been phenomenal. Return that character to grace. Everything I fell in love with him, because that was my first book, was Superman. Big fan right here.
I'll have to look for that one.
Yeah, for sure. The trades are out, so.
Okay. The last great Batman book that I read was the Batman Elmer Fudd team up. That book was fantastic.
Yes. I did not get to read the book in hand because I waited too long and they were gone. And I can see why, but I did catch the Comic Storian episode on that one, and it looks phenomenal. And the way they tie all the bugs and everyone else into it, it's just really great storytelling.
Brilliant. Well,
that's going to do it for me. Is there anything upcoming that you wanted to plug?
Not really. Just I'm going to the conventions. I've got Tricon coming up. Week after that, I'll be at Wizard World Columbus. I'm not really doing a whole lot of other shows this summer. I'm kind of taking a little bit of a break from shows so I can produce more work. I got to get Frank 2 and issue 3 and 4. Sorry, just got 2 done. I have to get issues 3 and 4 finished, and then I've got some some things I've been holding off. Some people that have been asking me to do some work that I'm excited about. Can't really talk about it yet.
Ooh, tantalizing.
Yeah, I got some stuff in the works.
Cool. Well, Todd, where can the people find you if they want to get some commission work done?
I'm everywhere. I'm on Facebook. My main art account on Facebook is Todd Beistel Artist. I'm on Twitter and Instagram under T Beistel. And I've got a store envy page where I sell prints and original artwork. Yeah, I'm everywhere.
Cool. Well, guys, like this episode if you liked it, subscribe if you loved it. Check out all of our social media as well as Todd's info down in the description below. My guest today has been Todd Beistel. My name is Vincent Herman, Vin The Human. Don't forget to check him out, check us out. We're going to be going live from Tricon June 2nd, Huntington, West Virginia. Again, $10 at the door. Kids under 10 get in free. You cannot beat that price. That is just great. And I'm telling you, I've been to a few of these shows. I love this convention. For $10, you can't do better, for sure. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. Again, Todd, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
And, of course, as always, cue that badass outro music.